Hey guys, this is Dawn. Welcome to Gulf Coast October. In this series, I've been reading my book, Enchanted by Saint YAYA. And today we're reading Chapter 7, Stick Buckets and the Scales of Reason. So I'd love it if you hang out. Chapter 7, Stick Buckets and the Scales of Reason. The problem with my brain is that it was trained from a very young age to believe that anything too good to be true would end in heartbreak. I don't know why fight or flight set in before I could make a healthy decision on the matter, but it did. I'd now been working at the Speedy Save on the hipster side of the highway for over a month. I hated it. I was exhausted, but I was safe. I worked the second shift, usually alone, every day from 6 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon, except on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. The pay was shitty at $6.25 an hour, and I knew that if I could pop out a penis, I would automatically get paid $2 more. If I put my thumb in my mouth and blew hard enough, just maybe. I had ignored Claire's yard gifts completely. She got the hint by the end of the first week, then one day everything was gone. She was never brazened enough to come to the diner, and June quickly figured out that she had to drop it too. I'd made up my mind. From time to time, I felt that my friends were disappointed and even concerned, but I was oblivious as to how ill I now came across. In my world, I could breathe again. In my mind, I was right, and I was doing the only thing that could be done. I still hung out at the diner almost every day and pretended that everything was fine. Not every morning, but most mornings. Things were normal enough now that nobody freaked out if they didn't see me for a day or two. One day, though, the smallest little thing threw my mind for a spin. I had gotten to the diner around 4:45 in the morning, and June seemed very happy to greet me. A little too happy. "Morning, sugar," she said with a huge smile. I froze in my tracks and looked around for a possible exit strategy. Mary was the only one there yet, wearing her overalls and eating a cinnamon roll with her dirty fingers. Mary gave me a wink, and my breathing became quick and shallow. "What?" I managed to whisper. "Sit down," Mary said. I slowly sat, looking back over my shoulder, trying to will Bird to show up. I became too aware that he wasn't there, and I had a horrible idea in my head that he wasn't there on purpose. Maybe these hens were hatching something I wouldn't like, and he wanted nothing to do with it. Or maybe he was dead and everyone had hated him all this time. My brain was in overdrive. I blinked while my eyes rolled around, so I gave my whole head a shake to reset the system. The moment I sat down, June set my coffee on the table, a large foam mug, my usual. Or so I thought. "Try it," June said, smiling. Mary was smiling too. They were both smiling, and I was sure they were about to poison me. But for some crazy reason, I also had some sane reasoning floating around aimlessly up there. Like a flash, it showed up and it took over. Hey, I said, "What's this?" I finally smiled back and I took a sip. But something was wrong. Something was horribly wrong. It wasn't just half caffeinated and half decaffeinated with creamer and sugar. These bitches set me up. They both stared at me persistently, waiting for my reaction. I did my best to fake a smile, but my tone couldn't muster anything past less than enthused. "Hazelnut creamer," I said. "Nice, thank you." I set my coffee down and stared at the ceiling fan. It was off, and I really needed it to be on. I imagined it was on. In my mind, the blades were going around and around, casting a flickering cascade of lines across the wall. Dark and light, dark and light, dark and light. I could vaguely hear the disappointment in their chatter, but the topic changed to June's upcoming 2-month anniversary date with Joe Aloysius. I wanted to pay attention, but my mind was doing what it wanted. I was thinking of those scales of reason that Mary used to talk about. I was praying they would come in strong like a tool to twist my screws back tight, to no avail, unfortunately. The bowl on one side was filled with flowers, shells, glue, jars, and a bobblehead doll. At first I couldn't quite make out who the character was. Then the image became clear. The bobblehead doll was Claire. In the bowl on the other side was the register at the Speedy Save. It was surrounded by many bobblehead dolls. They were rocking back and forth and chattering. They got louder and louder and began barking commands in my face. They were yelling that I shortchanged them for their beer, or that the gasoline was filled with crap and tore up their car. Some of the male ones told me that I was too cute to be working at a gas station. I should be dancing up at the Queen of Hearts in Biloxi. Then they started reaching into the register and ripping the money out of it. I was helpless, and all I could do was curl up, put my hands over my ears, and wait for it to be over. One of the bobbleheads represented a customer, and it started to grow larger than the other ones, and I could see he had a gun. "Wake up," he said. All I could do was rock back and forth and say no. "Wake up," he yelled. I was crying and cursing God for hating me. Then I thought of St. Charlie Chubby, and immediately she came to my rescue. Out of the blue, with one large loud bang, her front foot had crashed the center of the scale. I couldn't tell if the sound was from the brake or if the gun had actually fired, but the bowls were now powerless without their strength. The center of the scale was shattered and the bowls were drifting off into the nothingness. The bobbleheads, the money, the crafty little things, and the register all drifted away until everything was gone. "Wake up!" a voice yelled. It was Bird. He was firm but kind, close enough to be helpful, and he knew better than to touch me. I had told him about my episodes, but he hadn't really seen them yet. They could all tell that I had been acting wacky, but no one was prepared to see me in a full-fired meltdown. I was still slightly rocking back and forth with my hands on my ears. "I gotta go to work," I whispered. "Call in," Bird said gently. No. I was trying to gather my druthers to get up. Bird got out of my way, but I still knocked over the coffee. I pushed him out of the way even more and tried not to run as I aimed my direction toward the door. I overheard Mary say, "Go, idiot, stop her." But Bird never came. The bell on the door was louder than ever, and it kept playing its toll in my mind the whole way to work. I'm pretty sure that Mary ran after me, but I was on my bike and gone like lightning before anyone had a chance to catch me. I had no idea what time it was, but apparently the morning had escaped me. "You are late," the first shift guy snapped at me. "Shit happens," I retorted. He wasn't my boss, and we both knew I wasn't easy to replace. It had to be the worst job in town, and I was practically working for free. The asshole left before I could make the coffee, but I was relieved to have the store to myself. The coffee. My favorite part of the job was the coffee station. It was so much better once I started working there. I kept it spotless. The coffee was always fresh. I remade the regular every 45 minutes, and the decaf was made every 30 minutes. We had real sugar, fake sugar, milk, half and half, and we even had flavored powders, Irish cream, amaretto, and hazelnut powder, thank you very much. The best part was that I could drink as much of it as I wanted, and my boss never batted an eye. Maybe he would if he saw me, but he was a lazy boss. We rarely saw him except when he'd drop off the checks. Normally I loved taking care of the coffee at the beginning of my shift, but today my mind was wandering as I wiped down the area. A scale started to pop into my head again, but I didn't fight it this time. In one bowl was the hole, my friends, that cup of damn coffee, and the other bowl was my coffee station at the Speedy Save. I stood quietly and I accepted it. The spell had not taken over completely, and I was very aware when I saw a white utility van pull into the parking lot. As far as my Joe, I couldn't bear flavors this morning, so I kept my drink black. I took a sip as I walked up front to greet my customers. The bitter bland flavor triggered a response. In my vision, I became the center of the scale. I stopped for a moment to absorb it. It was the first time that I had felt that nostalgic ambience in over a month, and I did not want to lose it. I smiled and greeted my customers, 2 construction workers that came in every weekday morning on their way to New Orleans. My warmth took them off guard a bit. They didn't know how to respond. I tried to convince them that they were just being silly, but I realized I'd acted the same way earlier to Mary in June. "Did you get a raise?" one guy asked me. "Hell no," I laughed. 15 on number 4, a large soda, and what else? 3 packs of menthols in the box. That'll be $25.85 out of 30, 15 cents. Thanks, hon. See you tomorrow. Yes, ma'am. And with that, the store was empty again. I crawled up into one of the counters by the register, crisscrossed my legs, held my coffee close to my nose, and closed my eyes. The radio was playing a rerun of the Top 40 countdown from over the weekend, and I had found my happy place within myself. Every once in a while, I'd open my eyes to check the parking lot. The sun was shining a little different. The trees seemed greener, the sky was bluer, and the old liminal buildings across the street didn't seem so depressing. I did eventually have to get down off the counter. The noon crowd kept me pretty busy. My attitude adjustment had mellowed a bit, but was definitely still on the up and up. I didn't even freak out when Mary came into the store. I was well aware that maybe she was here to see me, but maybe she wasn't. Either way was okay. She looked nervous until we made eye contact and I smiled. "Well, who is this before me?" she asked. "I'm truly sorry about this morning. I feel a lot better now. I've actually had a really good day." "Well, girl, you better tell me your secret then." I paused for a minute. I needed the right words. The words I already had seemed simple and cheesy, but it was all I could come up with. "You helped me." "I did?" "Of course," I replied. "Well, shit, I need to hear this." "Your scales." "My what?" "Your scales of reason. I think about them sometimes. Especially since I started working here. Once in a while it gets out of hand and the bowls fill up with crazy shit. It overwhelms me. Like at the diner. I didn't even know where I was, but I was fighting it. I was trying too hard to be in control. But it had to win." The more I talked, the more concerned she seemed. I continued, but after I'd been at work a little while, the scales came back. I was too tired to fight it. I wondered what the bowls were going to fill up with this time. The bowls? She interrupted. Yes, the bowls on the scale. Oh, of course, she replied. We were interrupted for about 10 minutes while I waited on some customers. Mary didn't budge. I almost offered her some popcorn. The store was empty again, and she seemed to be on the edge of her seat. Well, what was in the bowls this time? Hazelnut creamer, I said with a smile. Mary paused for a good long minute with her mouth open before she erupted with laughter. Loud laughter. I was pretty sure that a bird under the overhang out front shit itself and flew off. The glass doors on the beer cooler vibrated. When she calmed down, I told her more. It didn't matter what was in the bowls. What mattered was what was in the center. What was in the center, she asked. Love, I replied. Mary's eyebrows were in two different positions. What did it look like, she asked. Me, I said with a smile. At that time, third shift came in over an hour early to relieve me. This was a first. The irony was that I didn't even mind being there now. I also, however, wouldn't mind leaving. Want to grab a float with me? I asked Mary. Here? No way, let's go see Bird. Did you walk? My truck is on the side. I didn't want to startle you. I think it's a great idea to go see Bird. Definitely. We moseyed side by side to the truck, and Mary showed off by tossing my bike into the back with one hand. I couldn't resist picking up a broken necklace chain I found on the ground. Bird makes good floats, does he? She asked as we were hopping into the truck. Nope, but I do. We both laughed and we were on our way. It felt weird to be free over an hour early. Mary took a different way than I would, which is a straighter shot than I knew how to go, and I got a new perspective of the location of his house. The windows in the truck were down. The air was on my face and in my hair, and it felt like hugs and kisses from the great wind spirit. It took us less than 2 minutes to get back to his house, and I couldn't be more eager to let him see me smile. Bird was so happy to see us pull up together. He looked shocked but happy. He greeted me on the porch with a hug, and I relayed that I had some floats to make. Want one? I asked him. I sure the hell do. You want a root beer float, Miss Mary? Yes, ma'am. I didn't come over here to look at this old man's face here, she said loudly. I was on my way in and careful not to slam the screen. I got busy making the floats and didn't pay too much attention to the fact that Mary and Bird were whispering. What in the world? He asked her. I know it. I went by the gas station to check on her. She was totally fine. Better than fine. She seemed peaceful, Mary told him. I haven't seen her glow like this in weeks, he replied. Over a month, it's true. She had some kind of spiritual thing happen when she got to work. Something about vision she's been having, letting them play through instead of trying to ignore them or hide from it. She's been having them often, he asked. Apparently, she said something about that I helped her. Bird looked at Mary as if to warn her to not get too egotistical. I'm serious, but I'm worried it also might be what triggered it. Something about a scale. Her whisper was very low at that point. She could probably hear me walking toward the door. I hollered out to them that I only had 2 hands. Everybody came in for a moment to grab their treat. We sat on the patio and ate our ice cream. Bird sat in his rocking chair, Mary relaxing on a folding chair, and I sat on the edge of the porch with my legs dangling down. We only talked once in a while and only in short sentences. This gave my mind time to wander. They were old enough to be my parents, and I wondered what life would have been like if they had been. After a while, Mary had to go. She asked if I wanted to ride home, but I wanted to stay a little bit longer. I was feeling good and not ready to go home. It wasn't until I was about to leave that I realized my bike was still in the back of her pickup truck. You can take mine if you want, he offered. He was still rocking peacefully in his chair. That's okay. Maybe I'm supposed to walk. Mary showed me a new way. I'll see you in the morning, my friend. I kissed his cheek and we touched foreheads for a moment before I headed on down the road. Instead of taking a right at the huge oak on the first corner, I kept walking. I could tell that the road was going at an angle toward my brother's street, and I couldn't believe I didn't know this way sooner. It was only just after 4 in the afternoon, and I was enjoying playing a reverse game of I Spy. I'd spot an object and then I'd call it out. Windowsills and patios had the most to offer. Small palm tree, small palm tree. Headless gnome, headless gnome. Non-headless gnome, non-headless gnome. Spoon wind chimes, spoon wind chimes. Stained glass butterfly, stained glass butterfly. Loud barking monster. Loud barking monster, loud barking monster. I walked super fast even though it was only a weenie dog and there was a solid chain link fence between the two of us. My goofy brain imagined the dog hiking up her dress and climbing over the fence like Nikki does. That's silly, I thought. Her legs aren't long enough. I continued on my way. Just as I was about to take a different street, I saw something in someone's kitchen window that almost made me trip. I looked away, let my eyes roll around for a moment, then I looked again. My eyes were not deceiving me. I didn't panic. I knew there had to be some logical explanation. I did pick up the pace, however, and was home within 5 minutes. Frank tried to tell me something, but I brushed past him and rushed to my room. I flung open the closet doors, shoved my clothes to the side, and dropped to my knees. They're gone. They're all gone. Frank came in the doorway and waited for me to tell him what was wrong. Did you let her take them? One side of his mouth pulled further down than the other, showing his bottom back teeth on that side. He put his hand up and walked slowly backwards away from me, the closet, and the missing lot of trash bouquets. Moose came snooping in like a helpful sleuth, sniffing all over the floor of the closet. Then he sat like a good boy and requested pats. Were you here? Did you let her take my stuff? I quietly asked the dog. His nose swooped away from me quickly, and he took off like he thought he was in trouble. They're definitely gone, and one is in the window of the house right on the corner. I sat on the bed and was amazed that my brain was blank. I really had no reaction. I'd had a long emotional day of ups and downs already, so I let myself take a nap. I knew I'd probably wake up at 10 and not be able to sleep again until it was time to wake up, but I needed to shut the system down. Surprisingly, I woke just before 8 o'clock. The sun was just starting to set. I emerged and I went to look for Frank. He was on the back porch enjoying his weekend. He looked nervous when he saw my shadow walking through the kitchen. I'm not mad, I promise. I just wanted to know when. 2 days ago. 2 days ago I was home. No, you were at work and then at the beach picking up shells and shit. I was? Oh, I guess I was. Well, where are they now? He shrugged. I could tell that he was telling the truth. My mind was starting to roll, but it was absolutely still at the same time. I had the urge to go to Claire's, but also not to go to Claire's. I compromised, and I decided to just ride by. Can I borrow one of those bikes in the shed? I asked him. Where's your bike I gave you? He asked. I lowered my head and I told him that I accidentally left it in the back of Mary's truck. He shrugged and nodded towards the shed. Thank you, I replied softly. He could tell that I wasn't trying to start trouble, but I couldn't sit still. Off to the shed I went. I had 3 bikes to choose from, and they were all boy bikes. I chose a trick bike for fun. I knew I looked funny on it, but I was feeling kind of funny, so it worked out well. It rode smooth, and I felt like I was 14 again. I was nervous as I came upon her house, but all seemed quiet, so I cruised right past. Now what? I rode down toward the beach, all around the harbor, back up through town, and decided to ride up Main Street. The lights in the shop windows were really beautiful at night, and I started to play Reverse I Spy again. Ice cream cone, postcard rack, pool table, rusty bicycle with huge red cannas in the basket, rusty bicycles with huge red cannas in the basket, fancy purple dress, pretty painting, boring painting, ugh, ugly painting. Then I saw something unbelievable, and I slammed on the brakes so hard I almost went over the handlebars. What the hell? I yelled with my hands in the air. There in the lit-up window in front of God and everybody else were my arrangements. Am I in the Twilight Zone? I knew where I was, but I had a lapse in direction from the shock. I got off my bike, and I looked for the sign. Tiki's Teaks. I should have known. I wasn't angry, though. I was intrigued. The display was quite interesting, and they actually looked good in the window of the old whitewashed building. Whoever set it up had even put Christmas lights all around him, and flower petals, too. I could tell there were some gaps where 3 of them had already been sold. I peeked in closer and noticed the price tags. $29.99. I guess she got her money back, I said out loud to no one. Just then I heard a bolt shift and the front door open. It was an employee locking up for the evening. She had a big, teased, yellow permanent hairdo, and when she turned in my direction, I could see she had on the frostiest pink lipstick that ever could exist. Even with high-heeled shoes on, she wasn't more than 5.5 feet tall. I had to see what information she was willing to give me. Excuse me, hi, hello, do you know whose booth that is? I pointed a very pointy finger at the window. That's our featured artist section. Featured artist, huh? And who would that be? I asked. I could feel my eyeballs narrow and my pointy finger started pointing at myself. Her name is, Dear something. They're kind of neat, aren't they? She smiled and gave the doorknob a wiggle to make sure it was locked and relaxed her position. Dearie Finch Lalaman, I asked. That's it. What a name, she said. Yeah, what a name, I said softly. I zoned out for a minute, still pointing at myself. I was thinking about how strange my name is, and come to think of it, how strange all of our names are. Her name was probably Pogo Stick or something, but I didn't get to find out. I realized I was creeping her out when she said, with a tremble in her voice, that she had to run. I'm awkward, so I said, You too. I apologized in my head and gave her a small wave goodbye with my non-pointing finger hand. I stared at the window some more. Now both of my hands were crossed in front of my heart. My eyebrows had changed from scrunched together to wide in surprise. Then, the confused corners of my mouth weren't so confused anymore and raised up into a smile. I'm a featured artist, I thought. That's weird. I hopped back on the bike, and even though I'm probably too old to be acting like this, I popped a wheelie and bounced off the curb with the back tire. I didn't even know I could still do that. I was only 20 feet or so up the road when I heard a man's voice say, "Fancy." "Pardon?" I asked, straining my eyes toward the sidewalk, trying to see where the voice was coming from. He just happened to be walking under the low branches of a large tree when he spoke. He stepped into the light, and he took my breath away. This man was good looking. I assumed immediately he was Creole. He was 6 foot easy, beautiful wavy hair escaping from under his Panama hat, and the greenest eyes I have ever seen. I love a southern man in a Panama hat. "Fancy," he said, with one hand in his pocket and the other was down at his side. He wore a tan vest over a dress shirt. His sleeves were rolled up, untucked, with loose-fitting slacks and navy-colored slip-on canvas shoes. The soles were as white as a brand-new crayon and glowed brightly in the street light. The only jewelry, as far as I could tell, was a gold watch. For whatever crazy reason, he was talking to me. "No, I'm Dearie." Shut up, I thought. "Excuse me," he said. "That's my name, Dearie." "Oh, of course. Lauren, nice to meet you." He reached his hand out to take mine. It took all of my strength to not point out that his name wasn't weird. I gave him a limp hand. He made the best of it and shook it anyway. I didn't know what I was thinking. I guess I expected him to kiss it or something. Well, at least I knew where we stood. I pulled my hand away and hid it behind my back. He laughed. He had a really cute laugh. I was like a deer in the headlights. If he was an 18-wheeler, I'd be dead. "Nice bike," he said. My face got red. I was so embarrassed. It was okay, though. I knew he wasn't trying to flirt with me, and it's always easier when I know I'm not in their league. "It's my brother's. He used to compete when we were younger. I'm just goofing off. I should actually probably get off this thing before I break my neck." I stood next to the bike and prayed that I could just disappear. "Did you compete too?" he asked me. "No," I snorted. "I'm a girl." I felt silly. He stared at me and his face got serious. "You're a woman," he said. My face felt like it was turning purple. "Yeah," I replied shyly. "A woman that pops wheelies when nobody's looking." I'd really had enough excitement for one day, and I felt it was safer to leave now before my foot went in my mouth any further. It might come out of my ear if I wasn't careful. He laughed at the look on my face. "Well," I said, "I need to be heading home." "Better get that bike back to your brother," he replied. I was already walking away, pushing the bike. In agreement, I snapped my fingers and pointed in his direction. I couldn't wait to get around the corner. I was almost there. Once he was out of sight, I hopped back on the bike. I only had a few houses to pass before I got home, but I still managed to zone out imagining a life with Lauren. A beautiful home, kids, cars, the whole shebang. I was rudely snapped out of it when I lost control, rode into a ditch, and crashed into the wild sago palms that divided the neighbor's yard with ours. The end. So, yeah, sometimes these chapters are long, and when they're long, I figured out my editor does not let me do any stickers and embellishments and stuff, so I'm probably just not going to do them. I'm just going to edit out all the times I got tongue twisted while I was reading. If you've been hanging out this long, thank you so much. I want you to be blessed, blessed be, all that good stuff, and I will see you in chapter 8, I think. Bye. I might put it in the outtakes. Loud barking monster. That's the right. Oh, I just got bit by a mosquito. Okay. Things were normal enough now that if no... That's not what it says. In the bowl on the other side of the register... Wait.